Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host Anthony Gamer, and today we're going to be discussing rare and valuable Atari 2600 games, part 3. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank my friend Dave, who gave me all the information I needed in today's episode, including the prices, availability of some of these games. Many of you remember Dave, as he was the gentleman who loaned me Pursuit of the Pink Panther for an earlier episode. So today's episode is dedicated to him. Thank you, Dave. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the first game we're going to discuss is Asterix. Now, for those of you that are watching this and you live in North America, you've probably never heard of Asterix. It is a French language comic strip that's been running for many decades, and unfortunately, it's not really well known outside of Europe. So therefore, this game, which you are looking at here, is actually a version of the game Taz, which was a North American game, but because the Tasmanian Devil is not really well known, that's what I've read, in Europe, they made this game to be like the comic strip Asterix. It was released in very limited quantities in North America, mostly in Canada, because of the French speaking people in that country. And to find this game, it would usually run you about $75 loose and about $400 in the box. And next up we have Karate. Now, Karate was released by two companies, Froggo and Ultravision. The Froggo version is quite common and sells for hardly anything. The Ultravision version is quite rare and sells for top dollar. I myself and several other people consider this to be one of the absolute worst Atari games ever made, and I have to agree with that. And one of the things you learn when you study rare games is that quite a few of the rare and expensive games aren't really all that good, and this is definitely one of those. Of the two versions by Ultravision, the rarest one is this, the T-handled version, and this will run you anywhere from $1,200 to about $1,500. Yikes! Alright, next up we have Video Life. This was made by a company called Comavid, and the only way to get this was directly from the company. Now, if you purchased the cartridge Magic Card, an offer came with it for you to purchase Video Life. This program is really a lot of fun. What you do in this one is you create an initial state of life, a series of dots or shapes, and then watch as they take on a life of their own. Really a fun and addictive game, I have to be honest with you. It's probably the single most fun program on today's list. However, it is extremely valuable and extremely rare. To find the game available in cartridge format alone will run you about $1,200. And if you were lucky enough to find this game in the box, it will usually run you about anywhere from about $3,500 to $6,000. Next up is Magic Card. Now, Magic Card is quite similar to basic programming, in which you use basic language to create some cool programs. This cartridge is quite rare itself, as it runs about $800 with just a loose cart, and with the paperwork and overlays, it'll run you $2,500 to $3,500. Alright, next up is Cakewalk, also by Comavid. I think you're beginning to see a reoccurring theme here. Now, in this particular game, you are the chef, and you are trying to catch these cakes before they slip off the end of the conveyor belt and then toss them up ahead to, I guess, the front counter. It's actually a pretty cool game, and I consider it to be like Tapper in reverse. However, unlike Tapper, which is readily available, this game is quite rare and valuable. Just the cartridge alone will run you about $300 to $450. And if you are lucky enough to find it still in the box, it will run you anywhere from about $800 to about $1,200. Alright, next up is Stronghold. Now, this is a space shooter kind of game with very wonky controls. I had the hardest time getting the hang of this thing. Not really a fun game, however, it is pretty valuable. In loose cartridge, it'll run you about $250 to about $350, and if you find it still in the box, anywhere from around $600 to about $900. Like most Ventrilos, I'm a sucker for pinball games, and that includes pinball video games. So that is why the next game on the list, Bumper Bash, is probably one of my favorites. Like I said, I'm a sucker for pinball games, and this pinball game has got to be one of my favorites. And the reason being is that you actually just use both your paddle controllers like flippers in the real arcade. If you liked video pinball for Atari, like I did, you're going to love Bumper Bash. Now, this game is just like a real pinball machine. You have the bumpers and all the cool lights and the flippers and all that good stuff that you expect from a pinball game. However, unlike arcade pinball, which is readily available and can pretty much be purchased for less than what it cost when it first came out, Bumper Bash is a different story. This game is rare and can cost you a little bit. A loose cartridge will run you around $100, and if you find it still in the box, it will run you about $300 to $500. Alright, next up we have Gas Hog. This was made by Spectravision, which alone should tell you that anything with the Spectravision name on it is probably going to be rare. This game was sold exclusively through the Columbia House Record Club. Where did I get Raider from? I mean, Record Club. Now, it was quite rare in the United States. About the only place you were readily able to get it was in Canada. In North America, that is. It's actually quite common in PAL format. This is a pretty fun side-scrolling shooting game that is quite unique. It kind of brings to mind like a Mad Max kind of theme where gasoline is quite rare. And this game, although a lot of fun, will run you a little bit of money. You can actually expect to pay about $100 for it loose and about $500 to $700 for it still in the box. Alright, next we have another game I really enjoy playing, and that is Out of Control. Now, this isn't exactly a space shooter game because you're not really shooting. You're actually trying to maneuver in space around these buoys. Now, if you run into one or miss one, you got to start back over again. Now, this is kind of similar, in my opinion, to what an Activision game would be, because if you look at the instruction manual, they kind of give you the time that you should be able to complete each game with. For instance, in game number 1, you are moving at a fast speed, you have 10 buoys, and they guesstimate that you should be able to get through the level in about 55.75 seconds. And I've gotten nowhere near that. Although this game is a lot of fun, it is highly sought after by a lot of collectors. Just a loose cartridge alone will run you around $150 to $200. But if you are lucky enough to find it still in the box, it will run you anywhere from around $1,200 to around $1,500. Q*bert's Cube was a sequel to the game Q*bert, which was one of my all-time favorite arcade and Atari 2600 games. Now, although the arcade game was a lot of fun and had great graphics, the Atari 2600 port didn't. Check it out. Alright, in this game you are trying to change the colors of the blocks, kind of like regular Q*bert, except in this one you're supposed to be flipping the blocks and getting a particular color. And because of the limitations of the 2600, or because of the fact that this was a late release by Parker Brothers, who was getting out of the video game market, this game didn't port very well. However, even though it pretty much was a big disappointment, it is a little on the valuable side. A loose cartridge will run you anywhere from about $50 to $75, and in the box, around $300 to $400. Definitely a perfect example of a valuable game that isn't a lot of fun. And our final game for today is BMX Airmaster. BMX Airmaster was originally published by TNT Games and is quite common. You race on various tracks and half pipes with a BMX bike. Near the end of the 2600's life, Atari bought the rights to the game and re-released a limited number of copies. In my opinion, the graphics were pretty cool for its time period, especially since this was during Atari's Renaissance period in the late 80s. I actually really enjoyed this game as it brings to mind the California games for the 2600, which is gotta be one of my all-time favorite games, period. However, if you'd like to get a hold of the original version, it's actually quite reasonable. If you want to get the Atari version, it's going to cost you a little bit. A loose cartridge will cost you about $125, and a boxed version will run you anywhere from about $300 to $400. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Classic Gamer 74. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give us a great big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when I upload new videos. In the next episode, I'm going to be discussing the best and the worst of plug-and-play and handheld games. I'm going to tell you about ones that you should invest in and ones that you should avoid like the plague, so you won't want to miss that.
Oh, this is Mumford. I want my equal time.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Mumford. Yes, go ahead. We got time for your equal time. Go right ahead.
Now that you mention it there, Zippy, I've got some stuff to share. Back in my day,